ורעי למען אחי ורעי אתה בנה שלום לך.
Hello. As you can see, first time I'm recording my blog here in my sukkah, which I built together with my grandson a couple of days ago. Today is Friday and tonight starts Sukkot, which is a wonderful celebration of Jewish insecurity. And as Hashem said, we need to celebrate it in happiness regardless of the insecurity. But we will talk about it next week in the middle of Sukkot. This week we're learning Parsha Vezot Haberachah. The Torah reading of Vezot Haberachah is read on holiday of Simchat Torah as well, second time. It recounts the blessings Moses bestowed upon each of the tribes individually, and the story of Moses' death, and describes the greatness of his personality, prophecy, and deeds. As per God's instructions, Moses ascends Mount Nebo. Once on top of the mountain, God showed him all the land of Israel. Moses then died at the age of 120. Until his last moment, his eyes were not dimmed, so it means he didn't look old, and his skin never dried. The Israelites mourned Moses for 30 days, and Joshua immediately assumed the mantle of leadership. The Torah concludes this parsha with eulogy. Actually, the whole Torah concludes with this parsha. So the eulogy for Moses. He was the greatest prophet that ever lived, and he performed incredible and awesome miracles before the eyes of all of Israel. And that's the basic content of this parsha. It starts actually with the words, Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. Our sages remark that this is the only verse in Torah where Moses is identified as the man of God, with its implications particularly related to his blessings to Israel as a nation. They also note that he gave not only one blessing, but many, because he addressed each tribe. But the question is why the first words of this portion, Vezot Haberachah, translated, and this is the blessing, is only singular, not plural. One of the answers, it's more probably the simplest one of them, is that Moses wants to encompass in one blessing the fact that it's all one nation now, as if all tribes are part of the same united Israel. Being the man of God, Moses is the messenger of the Creator to deliver his blessings to Israel. Thus, Moses' blessings and God's blessings are the same. In this final chapter of the Torah, after all, for the last 40 years of his life, Moses certainly was the messenger of God and delivered God's legacy to Israel, including all Torah and all blessings. Israel has got many facets, many aspects for its society today, as well as it did have at the time of Moses' passing. People of Israel supposed to be merchants and Torah scholars, as well as warriors and priests, leaders and shepherds, as well as masons and silversmiths, and cooks and judges and undertakers, artists and scientists, rich and poor, as well as dreamers, philosophers, and storytellers. They could be Sephardim, Ashkenazim, and much more different, many different facets to what Israeli society is. Torah expects Israel to have all facets but the same identity directed to honor God's love. By being and manifesting love's ways and attributes in this world. This is how we defeat basically the negative thoughts, emotions, feelings, and passions represented by the other nations that Israelites conquered in order to dwell in the promised land, the land of Israel. That means today that all people of Israel, meaning Israel and diaspora, but mostly Israel, are expected to unite in a total, integral, balanced system, despite their differences of personalities, traits, backgrounds, different countries of their ancestors came from, and many more aspects. Only then, when we are all united, our purpose as the nation of the priests, God's servants, bringing the light of the Creator to the world, can and will be fulfilled. This project, called God's altruistic world on planet Earth, will be complete one way or the other. The peaceful and pleasant way, if we comply with the laws of Torah, and not so peaceful and maybe painful way if we don't. God never fails in his projects. So that is a fact. Unfortunately, instead of being an example and the light beacon to the world, demonstrations in Israel show today that to the whole world how divided we are. And this is why it's absolutely clear that He, Creator, is not really happy with our behavior as a nation of the priests, as His children. We are very naughty. Yeah. Hence, these statistics. Israel has nearly the highest COVID-19 infection rate per million population, 423 people per million. The only country above this horrible figure is Aruba, which has got a figure of 580.7 people per million population. But the fact is that its population is only 106,300 people as per census 2019. So, and it's a little tiny country on one of the Caribbean islands with very limited resources. So for comparison, Brazil, which has got very high level of infections, but still has got only 150 people per million infected, as well as USA, 130 people per million. What I'm saying is Hashem is sending a message to Israel and the whole world, of course. I think He is saying to us, to all humanity, generally, and to Israel specifically, start behaving as per the Torah law. Unite. You Jews must unite into one man, one heart. And if not, the 5,780 year which we just celebrated, passing it, and it was a terrible year, it could be just a warning. But it's Sukkot, it starts tonight, and I don't want to finish on negative note. So let's celebrate our Sukkot in our Sukkahs, together with our friends and relatives, in unity, in happiness, because it's Sukkot, it's a happy festival. And because we Jews are used to levels of uncertainty, but despite the uncertainty, we can celebrate in happiness. Shabbat Shalom.
למען החי ורעי, למען החי ורעי, אתה בנה, שלום לך, למען החי ורעי. למען החי ורע, אדם